The Bay City night was especially warm that Thursday in March. The wind coming from Bay City Harbor carried that characteristic smell of sea air mixed with the aroma of the kiosks selling fried pastries and fresh-pressed juice along the waterfront. Robert Sterling walked hand in hand with his daughter Isabella, a 7-year-old girl whose brown eyes sparkled with the same intensity as the lights that were beginning to flicker on across the city. Isabella swung her pink backpack on her back while chattering about her day at school, about the teacher who had praised her drawing, about her friend who had brought chocolate fudge balls to share during recess. Robert smiled, that tired but genuine smile of someone who works all day and still finds the energy to be present. He wore his faded jeans, a simple button-up shirt, and worn sneakers that had seen better days. His hands were rough, marked by his daily work as a cleaner at the Bay City Naval Base, but they were hands that held his daughter with all the care in the world. "Daddy, can we have pizza tonight?" the girl asked Robert, with that sweet voice he could never refuse. She looked up, at him with anticipation, making that face that melted any paternal resistance. Robert mentally calculated what was left of his salary. The rent for their small apartment in Willow Creek had already been paid, the electricity bill was up to date, and he had saved a little for emergencies. Perhaps he could indeed afford this small luxury for his daughter. After all, she deserved it. After everything they had been through in recent years, every smile from her was a victory. "Maybe, my love," he replied, gently squeezing her small hand. "But it has to be at that restaurant around the corner, the one you like. Nothing too expensive, okay?" Isabella jumped for joy, letting out a little squeal that made some people on the street look on sympathetically. Robert felt his heart tighten with tenderness. Sometimes he still couldn't believe that this luminous child was his daughter, that he had the responsibility and honor of raising her alone. Since Isabella's mother had left them, when the girl was only 2 years old, it had been just the two of them against the world, and Robert would do anything to protect her, to ensure she grew up happy, safe, loved. They entered the small restaurant on Garden Street, a simple but cozy place with red and white checkered tablecloths on the tables and a handwritten menu on a chalkboard hanging on the wall. The owner, Mr. Mario, a man in his 60s with a prominent belly and a wide smile, waved at them. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling." "Good evening, Bella," he greeted, using the girl's affectionate nickname. "Pizza night tonight, eh?" "Yes, it is, Mr. Mario," Robert replied, settling his daughter into one of the wooden chairs. "A margarita to share, please." Isabella began telling Mr. Mario about school, while Robert allowed himself to relax a little. It was in these moments, these small instances of peace and normality, that he could forget the weight he carried on his shoulders. The past that haunted him, the memories he tried to bury, the person he once was, and whom he now strived every day to leave behind. Robert Sterling was not born to be a cleaner. His story was very different, full of chapters he preferred to keep closed. There was a time when his name was spoken with respect and fear in very specific circles, a time when he didn't clean floors, but rather executed missions that the government preferred to deny existed, a time when he was part of a special unit, so secret that its members didn't even have complete official records. But that was over. It ended abruptly, painfully, betrayed. And Robert had made a choice to disappear, to start over, to be just a dedicated father. Mr. Mario brought the steaming pizza, and Isabella clapped her hands. Robert served her a slice, careful not to burn her little fingers, and took another for himself. The melted cheese, the homemade tomato sauce, the fresh basil. All so simple, so common, so perfectly normal. It was exactly what he wanted. A life without jolts, without dangers, without shadows. But life has a peculiar way of not following our plans. The restaurant door burst open violently. The sound of glass hitting the wall made everyone present look up. A young woman ran in, stumbling over her own feet, her face marked by tears and absolute terror. She must have been in her early 20s, dark hair tied in a messy ponytail, clothes of someone who had rushed out without thinking. Her eyes, wide with fear, swept the restaurant as if seeking salvation. "Please," she cried, her voice choked. "Please, help me. They're going to get me, please." Right behind her, 3 men entered. They were large, intimidating, with harsh expressions and coordinated movements. They weren't just street thugs. Robert immediately recognized the type. Trained, organized, dangerous. The first of them, a bald man with a scar on his chin, pointed at the young woman. "You'll regret running," he said, his voice low but laden with menace. The young woman backed up until she bumped into a table. Mr. Mario raised his hands, trying to calm the situation. "Calm down. Boys, let's talk calmly here," said the restaurant owner, his voice trembling slightly. "Get out of the way, old man," growled another of the men, this one in a black leather jacket with an empty gaze. Robert felt his entire body tense. That instinct he had spent years trying to put to sleep suddenly awoke, alert, assessing the situation. 3 men, hostile, coordinated. The young woman was in real danger. The other restaurant customers were frightened, cowering. Mr. Mario couldn't stop anything. And Isabella was there, his daughter, his entire world, watching everything with wide eyes. "Daddy," Isabella whispered, tugging at his sleeve. "The lady is scared." Robert looked at his daughter. Those innocent eyes, that pure heart that still believed the world could be good, that people should help each other. How could he teach her values if he didn't live them himself? He took a deep breath. This was going to complicate everything. It was going to jeopardize everything he had built. It was possibly going to reveal what he didn't want revealed. But there was a terrified young woman, and there was his daughter looking at him with expectation, waiting for her father to do the right thing. "Hey," Robert said, standing up slowly, his hands visible, his tone calm. "I think you'd better leave. You're scaring everyone." The 3 men looked at him, as if only now noticing his presence. The bald man gave a short, humorless laugh. "Seriously, are you?" he asked mockingly. "And what are you going to do if we don't, huh, cleaner?" Robert didn't answer immediately. He remained calm, maintained a relaxed posture, but his eyes didn't waver. He was assessing everything. Distances, positions, weak points. It was as if a dormant part of him was waking up, warming its muscles, preparing itself. "I don't want any trouble," he said, his voice still serene. "I just want my daughter to finish her pizza in peace. And I think this young lady deserves peace too. So please, leave." The second man, the one in the leather jacket, took a step forward. "You don't know who you're messing with, buddy. This isn't your business." The young woman took advantage of the distraction and ran behind the counter, seeking protection. Isabella remained seated, her eyes fixed on her father, confident in a way that both broke and strengthened Robert's heart at the same time. "It is my business now," Robert replied. "Because you came in here and scared innocent people, so I'm asking one more time, get out." The third man, who had remained silent until then, spoke for the first time. "Get him." It happened fast. The man in the leather jacket advanced first, with a direct punch aimed at Robert's face. But Robert was no longer there. He dodged with a fluidity that seemed impossible for someone of his build, rotating his body just enough, and in the movement used the attacker's own momentum against him. A touch to the elbow, a precise push, and the man found himself off balance, tripping over his own feet and falling heavily against a table. The bald man came next, more cautiously, trying to grab him. Robert blocked the movement, redirected the force, and with a subtle but devastating technique, made the man spin and fall to his knees. His arm twisted in a position that caused pain, but no permanent damage. The third man pulled something from his waist. Robert acted purely on instinct. He closed the distance in 2 quick steps, disarmed the man with a sequence of movements so precise it seemed choreographed, and neutralized him with a hold that left him immobilized. It all lasted less than 20 seconds. The restaurant fell into absolute silence. The 3 men were on the floor, groaning, dazed, clearly unable to continue any aggression. Robert released the last of them and stepped back, his hands trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was starting to subside. Mr. Mario's mouth was open. The young woman, hidden behind the counter, had tears in her eyes, but now of relief. And Isabella looked at her father with a mixture of admiration and surprise. "Daddy, you were amazing," she said softly. Robert returned to the table, his legs suddenly weak. What had he done? He had just exposed himself. He had just used techniques that only a handful of people in the world knew, techniques that identified him. The three men slowly got up. The bald man looked at Robert with an expression somewhere between anger and fear. "You'll regret this," he spat the words, before limping towards the door, followed by his accomplices. Robert didn't respond. He just watched until they had completely exited the restaurant. Then finally, he allowed himself to sit down again, his body heavy. The young woman came out from behind the counter, still trembling. She walked to Robert's table, her eyes red but grateful. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice failing. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here. Thank you, really." Robert nodded, not quite knowing what to say. "It's all right now," he murmured. "You're safe." "My name is Marina," she continued, wiping away tears. "Marina Olsen. I don't even know how to thank you. No need to thank me. Just be careful, okay?" Marina nodded, but before stepping away, she grabbed a napkin and quickly wrote something down. She left the paper on the table. "My phone number," she said. "If you need anything at all, please call me. I owe you a lot." Robert took the paper, more out of politeness than any real intention of using it. Marina gave a last shaky smile, thanked Mr. Mario again, and left the restaurant, looking nervously from side to side before disappearing into the night. "Mr. Sterling," said Mr. Mario, still processing everything, "where did you learn to do that?" Robert didn't have a good answer. Or rather, he did, but it wasn't one he could share. "Took some self-defense classes a long time ago," he lied, forcing a casual smile. "Basic stuff." "Basic, that was." Mr. Mario shook his head, impressed. "You took down 3 guys alone like it was nothing." "Luck," Robert insisted. "Just luck." But he knew it wasn't luck. It was training. It was muscle memory. It was years of a life he had sworn to leave behind resurfacing without permission. Isabella finished her slice of pizza, seemingly less shaken than the adults. For her father had always been her hero. This only confirmed what she already knew. "You can have another slice, my love," Robert said, trying to bring some normality back. As they ate, he couldn't stop thinking. Those men weren't ordinary. The way they moved, the coordination, there was something professional about them. And the young woman, Marina. Why were they after her? What had she done? Or what did she know? But more importantly, would someone have filmed it? In this age of cell phones, in a restaurant full of other people, it was almost certain that someone had recorded something. And if they recorded it, they would post it, and if they posted it, people would see it. People who might recognize those movements, that style. Robert felt a shiver run down his spine. They finished eating in relative silence. Robert paid the bill, left a generous tip for Mr. Mario as a silent request for discretion, and left with Isabella. The walk back home was calm on the surface but turbulent within. Robert kept his daughter close, his eyes alert to any suspicious movement on the streets. They arrived at their small apartment. 2 bedrooms, living room, kitchen, bathroom. Simple but clean, organized. Isabella ran to brush her teeth and put on her pajamas. Robert helped her, then tucked her into bed with her favorite teddy bear. "Daddy," Isabella asked drowsily, "are those bad men coming back?" "No, my love," he replied, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "They won't come back. And even if they did, I'm here to protect you. Always." "You're very strong, Daddy. I love you." "I love you too, Bella. More than anything in the world." He stayed there until she was completely asleep, watching her peaceful breathing, her serene little face. Then he went to the living room, turned on only a single lamp, and sat on the worn sofa. Robert picked up his old cell phone and started searching. Social media, local pages, neighborhood news groups. It didn't take long to find it. Mysterious man saves young woman from attackers in Bay City restaurant. The video had been posted less than an hour ago and already had thousands of views. Robert clicked, his heart racing. The quality wasn't the best, but it was possible to see. It was possible to see every move he had made, the way he dodged, the precision of his blocks, the almost supernatural fluidity. And for those who knew, for Those who had been trained in that specific method, it would be unmistakable. The comments were already speculating. This guy is a cop, definitely military. I saw Krav Maga moves. No, it's jiu-jitsu. Looks like special forces stuff. Robert closed the video, his breathing heavy. He rubbed his face with his hands, trying to think clearly. Maybe no one would make the connection. Maybe it was just another viral video that would be forgotten in days. Maybe. But an inner voice, the one that had kept him alive during years of dangerous missions, told him it wouldn't be that. Simple. Robert stood up and went to the small closet in the hallway. At the back, hidden behind old towels, was a shoebox. He took it and returned to the sofa. He opened it with slightly trembling fingers. Inside, there were some old photos, him younger, in uniform, alongside other men and women. All smiling, confident, a united team. There was also a medal he could never wear publicly, and a document with a name that wasn't Robert Sterling. He looked at those relics of a past life, a life of honor, purpose, but also of betrayal and loss. Everyone in that photo was dead or missing. The unit had been disbanded after an operation that went terribly wrong, and the person responsible for that tragedy was still out there, somewhere. Robert put everything back, closed the box, and hid it again. There was no point in dwelling. What was done was done. Now all that remained was to wait and hope that the storm would pass without touching him. He lay on the sofa, too tired to go to the bedroom. He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. Memories came in waves, operations in the Middle East, missions in South America, the adrenaline, the camaraderie, the final betrayal. The day everything collapsed and he had to disappear to survive. But then came the memory of the day Isabella was born, the moment he held her in his arms for the first time and swore he would be a better man, the father she deserved. And came the memory of every small victory of those years as a single father. Her first day of school. The first word she read alone. Every smile that brightened the hardest days. Robert had traded a life of action and danger for one of simplicity and love. And he didn't regret it. He would never regret it. Finally, close to 3 in the morning, he dozed off. But it was a light sleep, alert, the kind of sleep of someone who never fully relaxes, of someone who knows that danger can come at any moment. And that night, miles away, in a luxurious residence in the heights of Bay City, a middle-aged woman watched the same video. She had gray hair tied in an impeccable bun, a naval uniform with high-ranking insignia, and eyes that had seen much in life. Admiral Teresa. Olsen watched the video for the 5th time, every movement, every technique, and she felt her blood run cold. She knew those movements. She knew that style. She knew because she herself had approved the training program that created them. A program so secret that it officially never existed. A program that had formed the best operatives the country had ever had, and a program that had ended in tragedy almost 10 years ago. Teresa picked up the phone and made a call. "Colonel Maxwell," she said when someone answered. "I need an urgent investigation. I want to know everything about the man in this video I'm sending you. Name, address, history, everything. And I want it yesterday." She hung up and looked back at the screen. The man who had saved that young woman was not just any hero. He was someone trained by the elite. Someone who should be dead, missing, or at the very least impossible to find. And the young woman he had saved was her daughter, Marina. Her only daughter. Teresa felt a mixture of deep gratitude and absolute terror. Gratitude because someone had protected Marina when she hadn't been there. Terror because if that man was alive and using those techniques, it meant that perhaps others were too. And perhaps the mistakes of the past, the enemies they had made, were returning. She looked out the window at the illuminated city below. Bay City never fully slept. There were always lights, movement, life. But there were also shadows. And it was the shadows she feared most. Tomorrow she would find that man. She would look into his eyes and discover who he really was. Because if he was who she suspected, then everything changed. It changed Marina's safety. It changed the risks they faced. It changed the entire game. And Teresa Olsen did not like surprises. Not on this scale. not when it involved the daughter she loved more than life itself. The night wore on, and Bay City continued its rhythm. But for some people, sleep would not come easily. Robert, in his humble apartment, dreamed of shadows from the past. Marina, in her room, still felt her heart racing, remembering the terror and relief. And Teresa, at her desk, planned her next move with the precision of someone who had commanded military operations for decades. The video continued to go viral. The comments grew. And somewhere in some dark corner of the world, other people were also watching. People who recognized those movements. People who had scores to settle. People who thought that all the ghosts of that past were buried. But ghosts don't stay buried forever. Sometimes they resurface, and when they resurface, they bring with them everything that was tried to be forgotten. Robert Sterling's life, the simple and quiet life he had built with such care, was about to be shaken. And he didn't yet know how much. He didn't yet understand that those 20 seconds in the restaurant had changed everything. That from that moment on, there would be no turning back. That the past he had tried so hard to forget was coming back. And it brought with it secrets, dangers, and perhaps, just perhaps, a chance at redemption. But that he would only discover when the sun rose, when the pieces began to move, when destinies began to intertwine in ways no one could predict. For now, Robert slept and dreamed. Dreamed of Isabella growing up happy. Dreamed of a life without jolts. Dreamed of peace. But dreams, however beautiful, do not always resist the light of day. The sun entered the window of the small apartment with that typical intensity of Bay City mornings. Robert woke up on the sofa, his body aching from the uncomfortable position and accumulated tension. For a brief moment, still between sleep and wakefulness, he forgot what had happened the night before. But reality returned quickly, like a bucket of cold water. The video, the fight, the exposure. He picked up his phone and checked again. The video now had hundreds of thousands of views. It was being shared in groups, pages. Even some smaller news portals had picked up the story. Mysterious man uses combat techniques to save young woman in Bay City. The speculations continued in the comments. Military, police, security, professional fighter. Robert sighed deeply. There was no undoing it. All that remained was to deal with the consequences. He got up, put away his phone, and went to prepare breakfast. Isabella woke up shortly after, rubbing her eyes and dragging her teddy bear. She sat at the kitchen table, still sleepy, while Robert prepared chocolate milk and buttered toast. "Good morning, Princess," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Good morning, Daddy. It's Saturday." Right, what are we going to do, Robert thought. Usually on Saturdays they would go to the park or visit Isabella's maternal grandmother or simply stay home watching cartoons. But today he had a strange feeling, a premonition that their routine would be interrupted. "We'll see, my love. Maybe we'll stay home today. How about watching those movies you like?" Isabella pouted but agreed. She was a calm child, used to adapting. After all, it was just her and her father. She had learned early on to be understanding. They had breakfast together, Isabella chattering about a show she wanted to watch, and Robert trying to maintain normalcy. But his mind was alert, processing possibilities, preparing for whatever might come. And it came. Around 10 in the morning, there was a knock on the door. It wasn't a casual knock. It was firm, determined, official. Robert felt his stomach clench. He went to the door, looked through the peephole, and saw what he feared. A middle-aged woman, in an impeccable naval uniform, erect posture, accompanied by 2 soldiers who stood a few steps behind. The admiral he had seen in the video last night when he searched for Marina. Teresa Olsen, commander of naval operations, one of the most powerful women in the country's armed forces, and Marina's mother. Robert took a deep breath, adjusted the simple shirt he was wearing, and opened the door. His eyes met hers, and there was a silent, mutual recognition. She knew who he was, or at least she knew what he had been. "Mr. Robert Sterling," she said, her voice firm but not aggressive. "Admiral Teresa Olsen, I need to speak with you. It's urgent." Robert nodded. There was no escaping this. "Please come in," he said, stepping aside. Teresa gestured for the Soldiers to remain outside and entered alone. She observed the small apartment, the simple furniture, the humble life Robert had built. There was no judgment in her eyes, only assessment. Isabella appeared in the living room, curious. She looked at the woman in uniform with those big, innocent eyes. "Daddy, who's the lady?" "A friend, my love," Robert replied, crouching down to her level. "I need to talk to her about some work things. Can you stay in your room watching your cartoons? Can you?" Isabella agreed, but before leaving she gave Teresa a polite little smile. The admiral returned, it with a gentle nod. When the girl left, Robert turned his attention back to his visitor. "Coffee," he offered. "Please." They sat at the small kitchen table. Robert served the coffee in simple mugs. For a moment, silence prevailed, only the distant sound of the cartoon coming from Isabella's room. Teresa took a sip, then put down her mug and looked directly at Robert. "I saw the video," she said, without preamble, "and I recognized every movement, every technique. The Phoenix program had a very specific signature." Robert didn't avert his gaze. There was no point in denying it. "The Phoenix program officially never existed," he replied, his voice low. "Officially," Teresa agreed, "but we both know it existed, and we know what happened to it." Robert tightened his grip on his mug, his knuckles turning white. "Everyone died," he said, each word heavy. "The operation in Havana was a massacre. We were betrayed from within. Everyone was killed or captured. I only survived because you disappeared," Teresa finished. "You vanished from the records, died on paper, and built this life." She looked around again, then back at him. "An honest life, humble, as a single father. I admire that." Robert relaxed a little. She hadn't come to arrest or interrogate. There was something more. "The young woman you saved last night," Teresa continued, her voice gaining an emotional layer that wasn't there before, "is my daughter, Marina, my only daughter." "I looked her up afterward," Robert admitted. "I needed to know who she was, in case there were consequences." "And there are," Teresa said, leaning forward. "Consequences that go beyond what you imagine. Those 3 men who tried to get Marina were not common criminals. They were professionals, sent by someone." "By whom?" Teresa hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. "I'm investigating, but I have suspicions. And if my suspicions are correct, then Marina is in danger. And now, Mr. Sterling, you are too." Robert felt the weight of those words. He closed his eyes for a moment, processing. "The video," he said. "If someone from the past saw it, if someone recognized—" "Exactly," Teresa confirmed. "You disappeared years ago, but now you've resurfaced. And people who thought all members of the Phoenix program were dead may have discovered they're not, especially people who have reasons to fear what you knew." Robert stood up, began, pacing the small kitchen, hands on his hips, thinking quickly. "I'm not that man anymore," he said. "I left everything behind. I have a daughter, a life. I can't go back to that world." "And I'm not asking you to go back," Teresa said, also standing. "I'm asking you to let me help, to protect you and your daughter, because if I'm right, they already know where you are, and they will come." "Who are they?" Robert asked, turning to face her. Teresa took a deep breath. "Do you remember Colonel Augustus Thorne?" The name hit Robert like a punch, to the stomach. Memories flooded his mind. Augustus Thorne, the commander who coordinated the Phoenix program operations, the man everyone trusted, and the man who betrayed them, the man responsible for the death of the entire team in Havana. "He's dead," Robert said, but his voice came out uncertain. "At least that's what the reports said." "The reports lied," Teresa revealed. "Augustus Thorne is alive, and in recent months there are indications that he has returned to the country. Suspicious movements, contacts with paramilitary groups, and now my daughter being pursued by professionals. You think it was him?" "I do. And if it was, he's not alone. And if he recognized you in that video, then you're a threat, because you're the only living witness to his betrayal." Robert leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of everything collapse on him. He had built a peaceful life. He had raised Isabella away from danger, and now, because of an act of kindness, of trying to help someone, everything was threatened. "What do you propose?" he asked finally. Teresa approached. "Protection. Mine and the Navy's. I'll take you and your daughter to a secure area on the naval base. I'll keep an eye on things. I'll investigate, and if Thorn comes, we'll be prepared." Robert thought of Isabella, of her routine, of her school, of her grandmother. Everything would be interrupted. But if there was real danger, if that monster from the past was really back, then there was no choice. "For how long?" he asked. "As long as it takes to neutralize the threat." "And if we can't?" Teresa held his gaze with steely determination. "Then we fight. Because I won't let anything happen to my daughter, and from what I've seen, you won't let anything happen to yours either." Robert nodded slowly. There was a mutual respect forming there. Two parents, two people who had lost much but still had something precious to protect. "I need some time," he said, "to explain to my daughter, to pack things." "You have 2 hours," Teresa replied, checking her watch. "After that, I'll come pick you up. And please, Mr. Sterling, don't leave the apartment until then. I already have men discreetly watching the building. If there's any suspicious movement, you'll be alerted." She headed for the door, but before leaving, she turned again. "And Mr. Sterling, Robert, thank you for saving my daughter. Regardless of everything, you saved her, and I will never forget that." Robert merely nodded. Teresa left, and he was alone in the kitchen, the coffee cooling in the mug, his thoughts in a whirl. Isabella appeared at the door, still holding her teddy bear. "Daddy, are you okay? You look sad." Robert opened his arms and she ran into them. He picked her up, hugged her tight, feeling the scent of children's shampoo, her light but so significant weight. "I'm fine, my love," he lied gently, "but we're going to need to take a little trip. You and we're going to stay in a different place for a few days." "Why?" Because sometimes we need an adventure, and it's going to be fun. You'll see." Isabella didn't seem entirely convinced, but she trusted her father blindly. "Okay, can I bring my teddy bear?" "You can bring anything you want, princess." Robert put her down, and she ran back to her room to pick out her favorite things. He stood there, looking at the small apartment that had been his refuge, his home. Now he would have to leave it, even if temporarily. He spent the next hour packing clothes, documents, essential items. He put the box with his past memories into a separate backpack. Maybe he would need them. Maybe it was time to stop running and face the ghosts once and for all. As he packed, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Hello? Robert?" The voice was feminine, young, nervous. "Marina. Marina, how did you get my number?" "My mother gave it to me. She said she went to look for you. Said she invited you to stay at the base. I wanted to thank you again and say I'm sorry if I caused you any trouble." Robert sat on the sofa. "You didn't cause any trouble, Marina. I chose to help, and I would do it again." There was a silence on the other end. "Why?" she asked, her voice small. "Why did you help me? You didn't even know me." "Because it was the right thing to do," he replied simply, "and because my daughter was watching. I need to be the example she deserves." "You're a good man," Marina said, emotional. "I don't know many like that." Robert noticed the pain in her voice. There was something more there. Something beyond the scare of the previous night. "Marina, those men, why were they after you?" She hesitated. "It's complicated. My life is complicated. My mother is who she is. So there are always pressures. There are always expectations. And sometimes I just want to be normal, you know? But there are people who want to use that against her. Or against me." Robert understood. The daughter of an admiral, she certainly had pressures he couldn't even imagine. "You'll be fine," he said. "Your mother is taking care of everything, and you're stronger than you think." "How? Do you know?" "Because you had the courage to run, to ask for help. Weak people give up. You fought." Marina softly sniffled on the other end of the line. "Thank you for everything. And We'll see each other at the base, right? We will. They hung up. Robert looked at his phone. Marina was young, vulnerable, carrying heavy burdens. Like Isabella, she deserved protection. She deserved to have someone to trust. The 2 hours passed quickly. When Teresa returned, now in a discreet military vehicle, Robert and Isabella were ready. The girl was excited about the adventure, completely oblivious to the real dangers. They got into the car. Teresa was in the passenger seat, a driver at the wheel, and another soldier in the back with Robert and Isabella. The drive to the naval base was silent, with only Isabella asking occasional questions that Robert answered patiently. The base was imposing. High gates, strict security, military installations spread over a huge area. They were taken to a residence in the back, a single-story but comfortable house with discreet but constant security. This will be your temporary home, Teresa explained. It has everything you need. Food will be provided, and you'll have freedom to move around within the base, always accompanied by security. Isabella explored the house with curiosity. There was even a small game room with some toys, clearly prepared for their arrival. Robert approached Teresa. You did all this in 2 hours? I have resources, she replied with a half smile, and motivation. He nodded, looking around. And now? Now you rest today. Tomorrow I want to test your skills. I need to know exactly what I can count on if things get ugly. Robert didn't like the idea of being tested like a recruit, but he understood the logic. And Marina? She's safe. Here on the base too, in another residence, but she asked to come see you tomorrow if you don't mind. I don't mind. Teresa nodded and left, leaving Robert and Isabella alone. The girl came running, her eyes shining. Daddy, there's even a video game here. Can we play? You can, my love, let's play. And for a few hours, Robert allowed himself to just be a father. They played video games. They ate the food that was brought. They laughed. Isabella, in her innocence, turned everything into a fun adventure, and Robert, even with the weight of the world on his shoulders, found solace in her every laugh. At night, after putting Isabella to sleep, Robert went out to the small garden behind the house. The night was cool. The breeze from the sea carried salt. He looked up at the starry sky, thinking about everything that had changed in less than 24 hours. He heard footsteps and turned. Marina was there, walking slowly, her hands in the pockets of a light jacket. May I? She asked. Of course. She approached, stood beside him, also looking at the stars. Sorry to show up. Like this. I just couldn't sleep. I understand. Me neither. They stood in silence for a moment. You know, Marina began, her voice soft, I always thought my life was difficult. Pressure from my mother. Expectations. Having to be perfect. But last night, when those men got me, I realized I didn't know anything. I didn't know what real fear was, until you appeared. Robert looked at her. She was a beautiful young woman, with delicate features, but there was a sadness in her eyes that went beyond her years. Your mother loves you very much, he said. Everything she does is to protect you. I know, but sometimes I wish she would just be a mother, you know. Not an admiral, just a mother. Robert understood that feeling more than she imagined. Being a father or a mother is difficult, he said. We always make mistakes. We always think we could have done better, but in the end, if there's love, the rest adjusts. You seem like an incredible father. I try. It's all I can do. Try. Marina smiled for the first time since she arrived. Your daughter is lucky. I'm the lucky one. She's my light. They talked a little more. About simple things, about life, about dreams. Marina said she was studying psychology, that she wanted to help people, that she felt it was the opposite of her mother's military career, but it was what her heart desired. Robert shared small details about Isabella, about what it was like to be a single father, about the challenges and joys. When Marina finally said goodbye and returned to her residence, Robert felt something stir within him, a connection he didn't expect, a mutual understanding. Perhaps in the midst of all that chaos, something good could emerge. He went inside the house, checked on Isabella sleeping peacefully, and finally allowed himself to lie down. But first, he picked up his phone and wrote a message to Teresa. "Thank you for everything. We are safe. Tomorrow, I'm ready for whatever comes." The reply came quickly. "Rest. You'll need it." Robert turned off his phone and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would be another day. A day of tests, of proving he still had what it took. A day to show that even though he had left that world behind, the essence of the warrior he had been still lived. But as he slept, somewhere in the city eyes watched. Information was exchanged. Plans were drawn. And Augustus Thorne, the ghost everyone thought dead, smiled as he saw the pieces moving exactly as he had planned. The hunt was just beginning, and this time there would be no escape. But Robert didn't know that yet. He didn't know that the coming days would test not only his physical abilities, but his will, his determination, and most importantly, his heart. Because protecting those we love requires more than strength. It requires the courage to face the past, accept the present, and fight for the future. And Robert Sterling, the cleaner who was once an elite warrior, was about to discover that some battles you don't choose. But when they come, you fight with everything you have. Because that's what fathers do. That's what heroes do. Even when they don't see themselves as heroes. And as Bay City slept under the stars, the seeds of the final confrontation were already planted, waiting only for the right moment to blossom in all its intensity. The morning arrived with the characteristic sound of the naval base, distant whistles, boots marching in sync, the rumble of vessel engines. Robert woke up early, his body still remembering that military routine even after so many years. Isabella slept soundly, hugging her teddy bear, completely oblivious to the tension surrounding the place. He got up carefully, showered, and put on the training clothes Teresa had provided. Black tactical pants, a compression shirt, appropriate sneakers. When he looked in the mirror for an instant, he saw the man he used to be. Younger, more confident, more dangerous. But that man carried ghosts that today's Robert preferred to keep buried. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was a young soldier, probably in his 20s, with a rigid posture and evident respect. "Mr. Sterling, the Admiral requests your presence at the training grounds at 7 o'clock. It's 6:40. You will have an escort there." Robert nodded. "My daughter?" "It's already been arranged. Ms. Carla, our social worker, will stay with her. She has experience with children. Your daughter will be safe and well cared for." "Thank you." Robert went to Isabella's room, knelt beside her bed and gently kissed her forehead. The girl stirred, half awake. "Daddy," she murmured, "I'm going out for a little while." "My love, but a very nice lady will be here with you. You can trust her, okay?" "Okay, I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Princess, more than anything." He left before emotion completely overwhelmed him. He followed the soldier through the base buildings, observing the morning activity. Sailors saluted respectfully, some cast curious glances. News traveled fast in closed environments. Everyone probably already knew who he was, or at least that he was important enough for the Admiral to bring onto the base. The training grounds were in an isolated area, surrounded by high walls. When he arrived, Robert saw Teresa waiting, accompanied by 3 combat instructors and 2 medics. There was also monitoring equipment, cameras, and a small bench with water and basic medical supplies. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," Teresa greeted professionally. "I hope you rested well." "Enough," she gestured to the instructors. "These are Captain Davies, Sergeant Lewis, and Corporal Fletcher, all specialists in hand-to-hand combat, infiltration tactics, and advanced defense. They will put you through a series of tests." Robert looked at the 3 men, young, strong, well-trained. But there was a difference between conventional training and what he had received in the Phoenix program. That program didn't follow manuals. It created predators. "Let's start with something basic," said Captain Davies, a tall man with broad shoulders. "Unarmed combat, one-on-one. I want to see what you've got." Robert entered the improvised ring. Davies followed him, assuming a guard stance. They circled each other. Davies attacked first, a quick jab followed by a cross. Correct movements, technically precise. Robert blocked them effortlessly, dodged and counterattacked with a sequence that flowed like water. Davies tried to defend, but Robert was already inside his guard, controlling his center of gravity, and with a smooth but effective movement, he took him down. Davies got up, surprised but not discouraged. He tried again, this time more cautiously, but the result was the same. Robert didn't use brute force. He used precision, timing, intimate knowledge of how the human body moved and where its weak points were. After 5 minutes, Davies was sweaty and frustrated. Robert had barely moved from his spot. "Impressive," the captain admitted, catching his breath. "Your technique is unlike anything I've seen." "It was trained to be," Robert said simply. Teresa watched with a neutral expression, but her eyes revealed satisfaction. She knew he was good. Now, she had confirmation. "Next test," she announced. "Multiple opponents. The 3 of you against him." The 3 instructors exchanged glances. This was unusual, but orders were orders. Robert stood in the center. The 3 surrounded him, coordinating with subtle gestures. When they attacked, it was simultaneous, but Robert was already moving before they completed their blows. He used one against the other, redirected forces, created openings. It was like watching a deadly dance where only one dancer knew all the steps. In less than 2 minutes, all 3 were on the ground, neutralized in ways that didn't cause serious harm, but made it clear who dominated the situation. Teresa applauded slowly. "Enough, rest." The instructors got up, now with genuine respect in their eyes. It wasn't humiliation, it was recognition of superiority. There were more tests, shooting. Robert hit targets at distances that impressed even the base's elite sharpshooters. Infiltration tactics. He crossed an obstacle course designed to be impossible to complete without being detected, and did so without triggering a single sensor. Physical endurance. He ran, climbed, jumped for hours, and when they finally stopped, he was tired but far from his limit. At noon, Teresa called a break. Robert was taken to a room where there was water, fruit, and a comfortable chair. He drank slowly, letting his body relax. The medics did quick checkups. Good blood pressure, stable heart rate, no injuries. Teresa entered, closing the door behind her. "You exceeded my expectations," she said, sitting down, "and my expectations were already high." Robert shrugged. "It's muscle memory. The body doesn't forget." "It's not just that," she countered. "I've seen many trained soldiers. You're different. You were molded to be a weapon, a thinking weapon. And now I'm just a father," Robert said, with a touch of bitterness. "A rusty weapon. Weapons don't rust. They just wait for the right moment." Robert stared at her. "I don't want to go back to being that." "I know, and I'm not asking you to. But if Thorn comes, and I believe he will, I need to know you can defend yourself. And defend my daughter if necessary." "I would do that without training," Robert said firmly. "Marina is a good person, and your daughter. I would protect her anyway." Teresa smiled, a genuine and rare smile. "That's why I trust you." They were interrupted by Marina's entrance. She wore casual clothes, jeans, and a light blouse, her hair down. She seemed more relaxed than in previous days. "Mom," she said, then looked at Robert. "Robert, I hope I'm not interrupting." "No, it's fine," Teresa replied. "We were just discussing the test results." Marina approached, curious. "And how did they go?" "Your savior is exceptional," Teresa said, with pride in her voice. "Better than I expected." Marina looked at Robert with admiration. "Doesn't surprise me, after what I saw that night." Robert felt a little uncomfortable with the compliments. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Marina disagreed softly. "Most people would have stayed quiet. Scared. You didn't. You acted. That's rare." Teresa observed the interaction between the two with interest. There was something there, a connection forming. "Marina," she said, "why don't you show Robert around the base? I have meetings this afternoon, and I think you two could talk a bit. Get to know each other better." Marina agreed, animated. Teresa left, leaving them alone. "Come on," Marina said, extending her hand. There are beautiful places here that many people don't know about. Robert hesitated, then took her hand. They left the testing room and began walking around the base. Marina showed him the internal gardens, small green oases amidst the grey concrete and steel. She showed him the chapel, a quiet place where sailors went to find peace. She showed him the pier, where imposing military ships were docked. As they walked, they talked. Marina told him more about her life, about growing up as the daughter of a high-ranking officer, always moving, always being the new kid, always carrying the weight of a surname that represented authority. She told him about her psychology studies, about how she wanted to understand people, help them heal traumas, and find purpose. "And you," she asked, sitting on a bench near the pier, "what's it like being a single father?" Robert sat beside her. "It's challenging, every day. But it's also the most rewarding thing I've ever done. Isabella saved me, in a way. She gave me purpose when I had lost everything. Were you married?" "For a short time. Her mother wasn't ready to be a mother. When Isabella was 2, she left. She left a letter saying she couldn't do it, that she was too young, that she wanted to live. We never saw her again." Marina touched his hand, a gesture of comfort. "I'm sorry." "No need. It was for the best. Isabella deserves someone who truly wants to be there. And I do. Every day. You're a good man, Robert." He looked at her. Marina's eyes had a depth that attracted him. It wasn't just physical beauty, it was something more. Vulnerability mixed with strength. Sadness mixed with hope. "You're strong too, Marina. More than you realize." "I don't feel strong. Most of the time I feel lost." "That's part of it. Everyone feels lost sometimes. What matters is to keep moving forward." They fell, silent, watching the waters of the bay. It was a moment of peace, rare amidst all the tension, and both allowed themselves to just be there, present, without thinking about the past or the future. But peace never lasts. An alarm sounded, loud, shrill, unmistakable. Soldiers began to run, voices shouted orders. Robert and Marina stood up immediately. "What's happening?" Marina asked, fear returning. "I don't know. Stay close to me." They ran back to the main buildings. Teresa was in the command center, surrounded by officers, looking at monitors with a tense expression. "What happened?" Robert asked upon arriving. "Perimeter breach," Teresa replied, without taking her eyes off the screens. 2 simultaneous attempts, east and west sectors. They were repelled, but it's a clear sign. "Sign of what?" Marina held her mother's arm. "That they found us," Teresa said. "That they know you're here." Robert felt his stomach clench. He looked at the monitors. Security camera images showed hooded men trying to scale the walls, being repelled by guards. They were not amateurs. They were professionals. "How many?" Robert asked. 6 in total, 3 in each sector, all neutralized or in flight. "They'll try again," Robert said. "This was reconnaissance, testing defenses." "I know," Teresa agreed. "That's why I'm doubling security and restricting movement. All of you stay in your residences until further notice." Robert nodded, but his mind was already working. If they managed to locate the base, if they managed to coordinate 2 simultaneous attempts, then they had resources. And information. Information that could only come from within. He pulled Teresa aside. "There's a leak," he said quietly. "Someone here is passing information." Teresa stared at him, her expression growing even more serious. "Impossible. Everyone here is vetted. Loyal." "Loyal until they're not," Robert insisted. "Thorne was always good at turning people, at finding weaknesses. If he's behind this, and I'm sure he is, then he's already planted someone here." Teresa processed that. It was a serious accusation. But Robert was right. The chances of them finding the base, of knowing exactly where to attack without internal help, were minimal. "I'll investigate," she said, discreetly. "Meanwhile, you, your daughter, and Marina will be under maximum protection." Robert agreed. Teresa gave more orders, organized the teams, and then dismissed everyone. Robert and Marina returned to their residences, accompanied by 4 armed guards. When they arrived, Isabella ran into her father's arms, frightened by the alarm. "Daddy, what was that noise?" "Just a test, my love," he lied, hugging her tight. "Everything's fine. You're safe." Marina watched, her heart aching. She saw the pure love between father and daughter and felt a pang of envy. Her relationship with her mother was complicated, full of unspoken expectations and emotional distances. "Can I stay here for a while?" she asked Robert softly. "I don't want to be alone." "Of course." They spent the afternoon together. They played with Isabella, watched cartoons, ate popcorn that the guards provided. It was surreal. Amidst all the tension, threats, dangers, there they were, trying to create a slice of normalcy. At night, after putting Isabella to sleep, Robert and Marina sat on the small porch of the residence. The sky was full of stars. The breeze carried the smell of the sea. "Are you scared?" Marina asked. "I am," Robert admitted. "Scared that something will happen to Isabella. Scared that I won't be able to protect her. Scared that my past will destroy her future." "Your past doesn't define you," Marina said. "What you do now defines you." Robert looked at her. "How are you? So wise being so young." Marina laughed, a genuine sound that lit up the night. "Psychology. And maybe from spending my whole life analyzing the people around me." "And what do you analyze in me?" She became serious, thoughtful. "I see a man trying to run from who he was, but I also see someone who can use that past for good, to protect. It's not weakness to have been a warrior. It's strength to know when to fight and when to retreat." Robert remained silent, absorbing those words. "You make me want to be better," he said finally. Marina blushed slightly. "And you make me feel safe. Something I haven't felt in a long time." They leaned closer, almost without realizing it. The moment was charged with emotion, with connection, with something blossoming between two wounded hearts. But before anything happened, one of the guards appeared. "Mr. Sterling, the admiral requests your presence. Urgent." Robert sighed, the moment broken. He looked at Marina. "I'll stay with Isabella," she said, understanding. "Thank you." Robert followed the guard to the command center. Teresa was there with an expression that mixed anger and pain. "I found the leak," she said when Robert entered. "And it's worse than we thought." She turned on a monitor. Security camera images showed an officer, a lieutenant Robert recognized by sight, talking on his cell phone at odd hours. Then, images of him leaving documents in specific locations, being picked up by unidentified civilians. "Lieutenant Carter," Teresa said, her voice filled with disappointment. 12 years of service, always reliable, but we found out he has debts, very high ones, gambling, and someone offered to pay those debts in exchange for information." "Did he confess?" Robert asked. "He's being interrogated now, but we already know enough. He passed details about the base, about you, about our security protocols." "And Thorne?" "Carter doesn't know that name. He only dealt with intermediaries, but the connection is clear." Robert processed it. Thorne was orchestrating everything, using pawns, staying in the shadows. It was his style. Always had been. "What do we do now?" Robert asked. Teresa looked at him, and for the first time, Robert saw uncertainty in her eyes. "I don't know. Reinforcing security here may not be enough. If he has more contacts, more resources, it may be a matter of time before he gets in." "Then we need to take the fight to him," Robert said. "Take it to him. It's risky. Staying here is too, and at least if I go to him, I know Isabella and Marina will be out of danger." Teresa studied his face. "You're talking about offering yourself as bait. I'm talking about ending this once and for all. Thorne wants me. He wants revenge, or he wants to ensure I won't talk. So I'll give him what he wants. I'll show up, but on my terms. It's suicide, or it's the only way out." Teresa walked around the room thinking. It was an impossible decision. But Robert was right. As long as they waited, Thorne would have the advantage. Time, resources, information. They needed to turn the tables. "Give me 24 hours, she finally said. "I'll prepare a plan, support, rescue teams. If you're going to do this, you'll do it with all the support I can offer. Agreed. Robert returned to the residence. Marina was in the living room reading a book. She looked up when he entered. Everything okay? For now. She noticed something in his gaze. Something changed. Robert, what's going to happen? He sat beside her, took her hands in his. I'm going to resolve this. I'm going to make sure you and Isabella are safe, I promise. Marina felt tears forming. I don't like the way you said that. It sounds like goodbye. It's not. It's a promise that I'll come back. And if you don't? Robert touched her face softly. I will come back because now I have reasons. 2 very important reasons. Marina leaned in and kissed his forehead, a soft kiss, full of unsaid emotion. Be careful. Please. Always. That night, Robert didn't sleep. He watched Isabella sleep, memorizing every detail. Her serene face, the way she breathed, the way she held her teddy bear. If something happened to him, he wanted to carry that image. He wanted it to be the last thing he saw, and he thought of Marina, of the connection they were creating, of the potential for something beautiful, something real. He hadn't planned to open up to anyone, not after everything, but she had arrived like a silent tornado, messing everything up, and he didn't care. At dawn, Teresa knocked on the door. She had a plan, a risky plan but possible. Robert would listen to everything, make adjustments and then put it into action, because it was time. Time to stop running, time to face the past, time to protect the future. And Robert Sterling, the cleaner who was once an elite warrior, was ready. Ready for the last battle. Ready to write the final chapter of a story that began in blood and betrayal, but would end in redemption and hope. At least that's what he believed. That's what he needed to believe, because the alternative was unacceptable. And so, as the sun rose over Bay City Harbor, painting the sky orange and gold, Robert made a silent promise to himself. He would return. For Isabella, for Marina, for the life he wanted to build. He would return alive, victorious, free, or he wouldn't return at all. The plan was simple on the surface, but dangerous in every detail. Robert would be the bait. He would leave digital traces, movements that Thorne could track, leading him to a specific location, an abandoned warehouse in the Bay City docks, far from civilians, far from Isabella and Marina. There, away from innocent eyes, away from those he loved, he would face the ghost that haunted him. Teresa would coordinate support teams, positioned in a wide but discreet perimeter. They would intervene only if Robert signaled an emergency. The idea was that Thorne would come alone, or with few men, confident in the superiority he had always demonstrated. And when he came, Robert would be waiting. But before anything else, there were goodbyes to say. On the morning of the operation, Robert woke Isabella with a kiss on her forehead. She opened her eyes, sleepy but happy to see her father. "Good morning, Princess," he said, his voice laden with emotion he tried to hide. "Good morning, Daddy. How are we doing today?" Robert sat on the edge of her bed. "Today, Daddy needs to go out to take care of some things, important things, but you'll stay here with Ms. Carla and with Marina. They'll take care of you." Isabella pouted. "But I want to stay with you." "I know, my love, and I want to stay with you too, always. But sometimes fathers need to do difficult things to protect their daughters, and that's what I'm going to do today. Protect you." Isabella hugged him tight, that tight child's hug that doesn't fully understand but senses that something is different. "You'll come back, won't you, Daddy?" Robert felt his heart break into pieces. He held her small face in his hands, looked deeply into her brown eyes that were so much like his own. "I'll come back. I always come back. Because you're my reason. You're everything to me. Do you understand?" Isabella nodded, tears beginning to fall. "I love you, Daddy. You're the best daddy in the world. And you're the best daughter in the entire universe." They hugged for long minutes, father and daughter, united by a love that transcended any danger. Finally, Robert released her, wiped away her tears and forced a smile. "Now I want you to be strong for me. Can you do that? I can. Good girl. I love you more than anything. I love you too, Daddy. Robert left the room before she saw his own tears. Marina was in the living room, already knowing what was about to happen. She stood up when she saw him, her expression mixing fear and admiration. So, it's today, she said softly. It is. Robert, Marina stopped, not knowing how to express everything she felt. They had known each other for only a few days, but it felt like a lifetime. The connection was undeniable, deep, real. I know, Robert said, approaching her. I feel it too. He took her hands, so soft compared to his own, rough from work. When I come back, he continued, I want a chance to really get to know you, without dangers, without threats, just the two of us. And Isabella, of course. I want to see if what we're feeling is real. I want to give it a chance. Marina had tears in her eyes. It's real, she whispered. I know it is. Then wait. For me. Wait for me to come back. She nodded, unable to speak. Robert pulled her into a hug, feeling her body tremble against his. It was comforting and painful at the same time. Comforting because he had someone who cared. Painful because he had so much to lose. Take care of Isabella for me, he asked. If I take too long, take care of her. Nothing will happen, Marina said, firm despite her tears. You'll come back, and we'll start over. All of us. Robert pulled away, looked at her one last time, memorizing every detail. Then, he turned and left before his courage failed him. Teresa was waiting in the vehicle. They drove in silence to the Bay City docks. The journey was accompanied by 3 discreet cars, support teams positioning themselves. The chosen warehouse was perfect, isolated with multiple accesses, ample internal space, a place where secrets could be revealed and settled without witnesses. Are you sure about this? Teresa asked when they stopped. I am. It's the only way. Robert, if something goes wrong, it won't, he interrupted. And if it does, you promise you'll take care of Isabella. Promise you'll make sure she grows up safe, happy, loved. Teresa held his hand. I promise, but it won't be necessary because you'll come back, you'll win, and you'll have the life you deserve. Robert nodded. They got out of the vehicle. The support team spread out, taking positions. Robert entered the warehouse alone, the door creaking open. Inside, the smell of rust and dampness dominated. There were old crates piled up, rusty metal structures, broken windows through which sunlight filtered in dusty beams. He went to the center, waited. The message had been sent. Thorne would know where to find him. And he would. Come, Robert was sure. Men like Thorne couldn't resist the opportunity to confront those they considered threats. It took less than an hour. The door opened again. Silhouettes appeared against the light. A central figure, tall, confident, and 2 men flanking him. When they fully entered and the door closed, Robert could see clearly. Augustus Thorne, the man who had betrayed everything and everyone. He was older, grey-haired, deep lines on his face, but his eyes were the same, cold, calculating, empty of any real humanity. Robert Sterling, Thorne said, his voice filled with false enthusiasm. Or should I say, ghost. I thought you were dead. Robert remained impassive. You wanted everyone to think that. Easier to bury your crimes if there are no witnesses. Thorne laughed, an unpleasant sound. Crimes? What a dramatic word. I did what was necessary. The Phoenix program was out of control. Operatives questioning orders, developing consciences. You were tools, not thinkers. We were people, Robert replied. People who trusted you, and you sold us out. I sold out to survive, to prosper, and it worked well until you showed up in that ridiculous video playing the hero. The 2 men beside Thorne moved, prepared. Robert assessed them. Mercenaries. Experienced, but not exceptional. Send them away, Robert said. This is between us 2. Thorne considered, then gestured. The 2 men moved to the edges of the warehouse, weapons in hand, but not aimed. Always had pride, Thorne commented. Always thinking you were special. But you know what you are, Robert. A failure. A cleaner, raising a brat alone. Pathetic. Robert didn't bite the bait. I chose this life. I chose to be a father, to be present, to be honest, things you never understood. Honesty doesn't pay bills, Thorne scoffed, doesn't build empires. You could have been great. You could have joined me when I offered, but you chose to run like a coward. I chose to live with my conscience, something you sold a long time ago. Thorne took a step forward, his expression hardening. I came here to finish what I started. You're the last one, the last member of the Phoenix program, and when I leave here, you'll be dead, and I can finally move on in peace. Robert assumed a guard stance, his body relaxing into that calm that precedes the storm. Then come, let's finish this, Thorne attacked. For a man his age, he was surprisingly fast. But Robert was better, always had been. He dodged, blocked, counterattacked. His movements flowed, a violent dance where every step could be fatal. Thorne was good, trained, experienced. But Robert had something Thorne never had: purpose. He fought not for pride or greed. He fought for Isabella, for Marina, for a chance at a future. Blows followed one after another. Thorne landed a punch to Robert's ribs, who retaliated with a kick that almost knocked his opponent down. They grappled, trying to immobilize each other, force against force. You can't win, Thorne grunted. I have resources, connections. Even if you defeat me here, others will come. Robert pushed him away, creating space. But they won't have you, and without you, they're just pieces without direction. Thorne pulled out a knife, the blade reflecting the filtered light. He advanced with deadly precision. Robert disarmed the blow, twisted Thorne's wrist, making him drop the weapon, and took him down. Thorne fell on his back, dazed. Robert could have ended it there. He could have used years of anger and resentment. But he looked at the fallen man and saw only an empty shell, someone who had lost everything that mattered in pursuit of power. It's over, Robert said, his voice firm. You lost. Thorne coughed, tried to get up, but his body wouldn't obey. If you kill me, you'll be just like me, a murderer. I won't kill you, Robert replied. I'll turn you in, so you face justice, so everyone knows what you did. Thorne laughed bitterly. Justice? There's no justice in this world. Maybe not, but there are consequences. Robert gestured, and Teresa's teams stormed the warehouse. The two mercenaries were quickly neutralized. Thorne was handcuffed, still laughing that empty laugh. Teresa entered, saw Thorne on the floor, and felt a deep satisfaction. It's done, she said. Robert nodded, exhausted but relieved. It is. Thorne was taken away. The teams cleared the area, and Robert finally allowed the adrenaline to subside. He sat on an old crate, his hands trembling slightly. Teresa approached. You did well. Very well. I just did what was necessary. No, you had the chance to kill him, to end it once and for all. But you chose the right path. That shows who you really are. Robert looked at her. And who am I? A good man. An incredible father. And someone who deserves a second chance. They returned to the base. News of Thorne's arrest spread quickly. Investigations would be opened, crimes revealed, justice would be done finally. When Robert arrived at the residence, Isabella ran into his arms. Daddy, you're back, she cried, jumping on him. Robert picked her up, spun her around, laughing despite his exhaustion and the pain in his ribs. I'm back, my love, as I promised. Marina was at the door, tears of relief streaming down her face. Robert put Isabella down and went to her. They embraced, tight, long, without words, because none were needed. It's over, he whispered in her ear. It's finally over. Teresa gave everyone a few days to recover. Then she called Robert for a talk. I have a proposal, she said. I want you to work with me, officially, as a security consultant, to train our teams, to share your experience. It would be an honest, well-paid job, and it would give you stability. Robert considered. And Isabella? She can attend the base school, better education, security, everything provided. And Marina? He asked, blushing slightly. Teresa smiled, a genuine mother's smile. Marina is already making her own decisions, but if you want my opinion, I think she's never been happier than in the last few days. and I attribute a large part of that to you." Robert accepted the offer. In the following weeks, his life took on a new shape. He began working at the base no longer as a cleaner but as a respected consultant. Isabella adapted to the new school, made friends, flourished. And Marina became a constant part of their lives. They went out together, dinners, walks around the city, long conversations on the beach. The connection that had begun, in dramatic circumstances, transformed into something real, solid, full of potential. 3 months later, on a sunny Saturday, the three of them were at Harbour Beach. Isabella was playing in the sand, building castles with adorable dedication. Robert and Marina sat in beach chairs watching. "She's amazing," Marina commented. "So full of life." "Takes after her father," Robert joked. Marina laughed, then grew serious. "Robert, can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Are you happy? Now, with all of this?" Robert thought. He looked at Isabella laughing in the sand. He looked at Marina, beautiful in the sun. He looked at the sea, vast and infinite, full of possibilities. "Yes," he replied sincerely. "For the first time in a long time, I am genuinely happy." "Me too," Marina said, taking his hand. "I never thought something good could come out of that horrible day at the restaurant, but it did. You did." "We found each other," Robert corrected, "and that made all the difference." Marina leaned in and kissed him, soft, sweet, full of promises. Isabella saw, made a childish grimace, but then smiled. She liked Marina. She liked seeing her father happy. When they parted, Marina whispered, "I love you." Robert felt his heart race. He hadn't expected that so soon, but it was true. He knew it was. "I love you too." And there, on that Bay City beach, under the generous sun, with the sound of the waves and Isabella's laughter, Robert finally understood. He understood that running from the past was not the answer. Facing it was. He understood that being strong didn't mean never needing help, but knowing when to accept it. He understood that love, true and pure, could heal even the deepest wounds. Life would still have challenges. It always would. But now he wasn't alone. He had Isabella, his light. He had Marina, his anchor. He had Teresa, who had become an ally and friend. He had a new life, built not on secrets and shadows, but on truth and hope. Months turned into a year. Robert and Marina formalized their relationship. Teresa gave her blessing, happy to see her radiant daughter. Isabella had gained not only a maternal figure in Marina, but also a friend. They were inseparable. Robert continued his work at the base, respected and valued. His contributions strengthened the nation's naval security in ways few understood, but all appreciated. And he did all this while maintaining balance, being the present father he always wanted to be. One December night, exactly 1 year after that fateful incident at the restaurant, Robert organized a special dinner. In their now larger, cozier residence, he set the table with candles, flowers, Marina's favorite food. Isabella was with Teresa, spending the night at her adoptive grandmother's house, as they affectionately called the admiral. It was just him and Marina. When she arrived, she was impressed by the decor. "What is all this?" she asked, her eyes shining. "A celebration," Robert replied, pulling out her chair. They dined, talked, laughed, and when dessert arrived, Robert stood up, went to her and knelt. Marina brought her hands to her mouth, tears already forming. Robert took a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a simple but beautiful ring. "Marina Olsen," he began, his voice emotional. "You came into my life when I least expected it, and you transformed everything. You made me believe again. Believe in love, in the future, in the possibility of being happy. You love my daughter as if she were your own. You love me despite everything. I was. You are my companion, my confidant, my love, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Marry me." Marina was openly crying now, her hands trembling. "Yes," she said, her voice failing with emotion. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Robert placed the ring on her finger, stood up and kissed her. It was a kiss of promise, of commitment, of eternal love. When they separated, Marina held his face. You saved me that night, but not just from the men. You saved me from myself, from loneliness, from fear. You gave me a family, a home, a future. We saved each other, Robert corrected, because alone I was just surviving. With you I'm living. They spent the night planning, a simple wedding, intimate, maybe on the beach, with Isabella as the flower girl, with Teresa walking beside Marina, with the new family they had built as witnesses, and that's exactly how it was. 3 months later, on a sunny afternoon at Lighthouse Beach, with Sugarloaf Mountain as a silent witness, Robert and Marina were married. Isabella threw flower petals radiant in her little white dress. Teresa stood beside Marina, proud and emotional. Some colleagues from the base attended, as did Mr. Mario from the restaurant, who wouldn't have missed it for anything. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife and they kissed, there was applause, laughter, happy tears. It was the beginning of a new era, not one free of challenges, but one full of love and support. The party was simple but joyful. Good food, live music, dancing. Isabella danced with her father, then with Marina, then with Teresa. It was a family united in ways that blood could not define, but the heart could. As night fell and the stars began to appear, Robert, Marina and Isabella sat on the sand, still in their party clothes, watching the sea. "Daddy," Isabella said, "does this mean Marina is my mum now?" "If you want her to be," Robert replied, looking at Marina. Isabella thought, then nodded decisively. "I do, because she takes care of me, she loves me, and she makes you happy." Marina hugged the girl, crying again. "I love you, Bella, very much, and I'll always be here, always." Isabella returned the hug, then took her father's hand and Marina's hand, joining the three. "Now we're a real family," she declared, with the simple wisdom of children. And they were. A family formed not by chance but by choice, by courage, by love. A family that had faced the worst and emerged stronger. A family that proved that happy endings were not just for fairy tales, but for those who fought for them. Robert looked up at the starry sky, thinking of all he had lost. His Phoenix program comrades. Years of his life lived in the shadows, but he also thought of everything he had gained. An incredible daughter, a wonderful wife, a life of purpose and meaning. "Thank you," he whispered to the stars, to the universe, to whatever force had guided his path there. "For what?" Marina asked. "For everything. For you. For this second chance." Marina kissed his cheek. "Life owes you that, and much more." They stayed there late, the three of them together, watching the waves, listening to the sea, feeling the breeze. It was peace. It was love. It was home. And when they finally returned home, to the apartment they now shared, Robert put Isabella to sleep, kissed Marina goodnight, and lay down with a smile on his face. He was no longer the ghost. He was no longer the tormented warrior. He was Robert Sterling, husband, father, happy man. And as he slept, there were no nightmares, only dreams. Dreams of the future, of Isabella growing up, of Marina by his side, of a life built on solid foundations of love, trust, and hope. The past had been faced, the present was blessed, and the future, oh, the future shone with infinite possibilities. Because in the end, no matter how dark the path, there is always light, there is always hope, there is always love. And for those brave enough to fight, to forgive, to love, there are always new beginnings. And Robert, Marina, and Isabella were just beginning their true story, a story not of survival but of full life, not of shadows but of light, not of fear but of love. And this story, unlike those Robert had lived before, did not have a tragic end. It had only a happy beginning, a beginning that extended through all the following days, each one a new page written with laughter, hugs, small moments of everyday happiness. Because that's what a life well lived is made of, not of grand heroic gestures, although those have their place, but of small daily choices, choosing love over hate, truth over lies, hope over despair. And Robert Sterling, the man who once fought enemies in the shadows, now fought only to be the best husband and father he could be. And in this fight, unlike all the others, he was winning every day. Bay City continued its life, bustling, chaotic, beautiful. And somewhere in this wonderful city, in a simple house full of love, a family slept peacefully, protected not by walls or weapons, but by the love they shared. And that, after all, was all that mattered. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Robert, Marina, and Isabella has deeply touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of redemption, love, and new beginnings, please leave a like below, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our stories, and tell us in the comments which moment touched you the most. Was it the first meeting at the restaurant, Robert's courage in protecting Marina, the love growing between them, or perhaps the emotional ending by the sea? We want to know what you felt. Every day we bring intense and emotional stories like this, which reveal the deepest and truest side of the human soul. Stories about overcoming challenges, family, love, and hope. Don't miss our next episode. We'll be waiting for you here, always with stories that go straight to the heart. See you soon, and thank you for joining us on this exciting journey.